it's Leslie and welcome back to my channel. Today I just want to go over the books I read for the Biannual Bibliothon, and I'm actually filming this on Thursday, so the Bibliothon ends tomorrow on Friday. And I have one book left that I have not gotten to on my TBR, which is Down Among the Sticks and Bones, but I'll finish that tomorrow, I'm sure. It's pretty short, so I don't have any thoughts on that one yet, but I have finished the other ones that I hope to on my TBR, and I just wanted to share my thoughts on those. Let's start with the group book, which is Otherworld by Jason Segel and Kirsten Miller. I actually enjoyed this book. Okay, let's start with this. It is not any groundbreaking book, and it's not even near like the best YA book, best fantasy, best dystopian, whatever you want to call it. It's not in the top tier of any of the best. But what it did do, at least for this readathon, is made me want to keep reading. It was enjoyable, it was funny, and for the most part, I pretty much liked it. There were some parts of the book that didn't seem to make a lot of sense. It was an introduction of some characters, which would be a little bit of spoilers, so I won't go into that. But keep in mind, there is some like weird parts that make you scratch your head and you're like, what is this? What does this mean? Why? What? But for the most part, it was a fun read. I am actually kind of looking forward to the second book. I enjoyed the main character enough that I wouldn't mind reading a second one. Another book that I finished was The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. And this is just a short story. It's like 30 pages about a woman who kind of goes crazy. There's not really any other way to explain it, and I don't know if that's the PC way to say it, but I found it really interesting. It's a book that I can totally see why it's talked about in like college courses. Because it's so short, there's so much you can kind of decipher. It's left pretty open-ended, and it's almost kind of like scary. It feels kind of scary, like you're in this woman's head, and I liked it. I can see why people are like, huh, what happened? Or what's the point of this? But I think it does show this relationship between a man and a woman, especially back 1800s. And it felt accurate for what you've read or what you've heard about the time period and relationships, and how a man always thinks that a woman who acts maybe a little different than he expects is going mad or is crazy or needs rest or is hysterical. Because it's so short, I recommend to anybody to read it. It does not take much of your time at all. The next book I read was The Awakening by Kate Chopin, and this was for the challenge of read a book that's featured in another form of media. And I liked this story. I found it engaging and I wanted to keep reading. I wanted to know, what happened at the end. I found Kate Chopin's writing really beautiful. I felt the way that she could write a scene and the way that each character felt very distinct, and I enjoyed that a lot. One of my favorite parts of the story is the way that she would describe Mr. Ratignolle, who is one of her friend's husbands, and she calls him salt of the earth, which is just such a sweet way of looking at someone, basically saying he's good-hearted, he's generous, and that no two people were better suited for each other. And I just found that so sweet, especially in the midst of a story about a woman named Edna who is pretty miserable. She's miserable in her marriage. She doesn't say too many bad things about her husband, and honestly, the husband is not portrayed that badly in the story. There are some scenes where he's being a jerk, but for the most part, he's pretty innocuous. But she's just unhappy. I feel like she feels a little alone and maybe doesn't know what to do with herself now, and she meets a man who she has somewhat of an affair with, and it's just an interesting story based on the fact that this was written so long ago, where divorce and infidelity, especially on the woman's part, was extremely taboo. And this is not exactly a happy story, so I see why there's a lot of bad or negative reviews about it on like Goodreads, but I feel like it's still important literature, and I think I am not smart enough to talk about all the themes, and I don't know, it's all way over my head. But for the most part, I found it enjoyable, and I think if you're just getting into reading classics like I am, it may not be a bad place to start, especially the audiobook, which I found very pleasant. The next book I read, which was for the challenge of a backlist title, I read 3 Wishes by Liane Moriarty. I really liked this book as well. Liane Moriarty writes people and relationships just impeccably. I feel like every time she's writing about a different set of characters or different relationship or what have you, you can see those people, you know those people. They are people you've met, they are people you interact with, they're your spouse maybe, or they're your boss, or they're people in your life, and it just feels so relatable, which I really enjoy. I will say, of the books I've read of hers, which I've read Big Little Lies, which is obviously super popular right now, the miniseries on HBO. I've also read The Husband's Secret and What Alice Forgot, which I do think are all 3 better stories. If you've never read Liane Moriarty, I suggest starting with Big Little Lies. But 3 Wishes was really good. There was a couple of scenes I was just like, man, I've felt this emotion before and I've never thought about putting it into words. And Liane Moriarty just knows how to do it. The last book I want to talk about today is a challenge for read a book you've never heard of. And for this one, I picked A Small Charred Face by Kazuki Sakuraba. This is a horror novel about a boy who meets a vampire and sort of their relationship. Now, this book is really hard to review because I feel like there's a lot of things you have to kind of take into consideration. One is that it's a translated work. I don't speak Japanese, so of course I'm reading this in English. And some of the language is just, it seems unnatural for an English speaker to either say things this way, or just the writing seemed just not as polished as I would have expected. So I don't know if that's the point. Overall, it just felt just a little bizarre in the way that it's written. Beyond sort of the language that's written in, the story being a horror novel has really thrown me off, because this is not a horror novel. It is not scary, it's not creepy, it's not gory. There's nothing about it that's scary. So I'm really confused as to why it's considered a horror novel, and maybe if somebody has read this or has any idea on why books are categorized as they are, could give some insight, that would be great, because I just keep thinking about that all week, where I'm like, why is this considered a horror novel? It is not scary. It's outside of it being vampires, but I mean, Twilight is not a horror novel, and that has plenty of vampires, so I don't know, but I gave this a 2.5 or 3 star. I just found that it didn't connect with me. It didn't, but I found it really intriguing and I wanted to keep reading. So, I mean, I guess that's a plus. I don't know. If you've ever read this story, let me know. Tell me what I should be thinking about it. Obviously, I can't even like talk about it in any way that's coherent to explain it, because I don't know. It's 3 kind of shorter stories all together, and honestly it would be much stronger if you just read the first kind of story, which is the bulk of the novel. It's like 140 pages, and this is only just, it's like 240 pages. So the other 2 kind of shorter stories are nowhere near as strong. The first one is the best, and when it ends you're sad, but it feels complete. So maybe I'm just in over my head with this one. So I sort of recommend it just so that somebody else reads it and tells me what I need to be thinking about it. But I don't know. I don't know. So those are all the books that I read for this readathon, for the Biannual Bibliothon. I had a lot of fun. I hope you thought my videos were at least watchable and not so embarrassing. Well, they were embarrassing. They were so embarrassing. But I had fun, and I feel like it's given me a little more confidence to just be myself and not be too shy about being silly or whatever. The internet should be fun. And some days, no, the internet makes you want to run away and hide in a hole because of the stories you read. But that's a topic for another discussion. I hope you enjoyed the Bibliothon if you did it yourself, and I'll be back to making, I guess, regular, normal videos and actually talking about the books I've read. And I hope you have a good rest of the month. Talk to you next week, and have a good day. Bye. Shoot. I don't know how to talk about this book.